Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Timecode from 2000. And this is the winner of my Patreon legacy or loyalty pick. I don't really have a name for what this is, but basically, if you have been in the movie review vote or the movie review raffle for a very long time, this has been in there since the beginning. I'm going to start reviewing the films that have just never been picked from the raffle or picked from the vote as a kind of thank you to my longtime patrons. And this was chosen by Sinram, who also has reviewed this film on his own channel, which I watched before this. And I know this is a favorite film of his because I've talked to him about it. And I've been curious to see it, and I've been curious to see this ever since I heard about it. I actually heard a radio interview with the director on my way to high school when this came out, I remember. Moving on from there, I guess. So this was the pick from that new Patreon program. So if you'd like to pledge to my Patreon and either get picked for the movie review vote or be a patron for long enough that you will get selected for getting me to review a movie I wouldn't otherwise would, then click on the link below for my Patreon, and maybe I will be reviewing your movie next month. The idea of Timecode works as thus. You have basically 4 storylines going on at once in one screen. A lot of films have done the kind of real time, doing the film as one continuous take, but this film doesn't have one continuous take. It doesn't have 2 continuous takes. It doesn't have 3 continuous takes. It has 4, all going on at the same time around the screen. You have one here, one down here, and one over here. And I think the director was the cameraman for this one. It was a big deal at the time because it was using digital technology. It's probably one of the first major studio films to actually be shot entirely digitally, which now is like all of them for the most part, with few exceptions. The ones that aren't, you probably know about. At the time, it was a big deal, and I don't think there'd be another. There was probably a few like Blair Witch and some things like that, but those were more independent films that were bought later. This was, made with movie stars and with studio backing and shot digitally. And I can't think of another one until like Collateral that was like a major one that it really got talked about, that it was shot digitally. I guess 28 Days Later as well. But it was really kind of a new thing. And the whole idea of having 4 storylines going on at once, Timecode didn't make it up. That was something Andy Warhol did. I've seen a John Waters film, Roman Candles, that I've reviewed also, that did that. And it's a very odd experience kind of watching a film like that, because it's weird to have sat in front of a movie, sat there and paid attention, and you're there. I didn't fall asleep, I didn't check my phone, I didn't do anything weird. You're sitting there watching it, and you feel like you may have not seen the entire film. And I think that's a weird feeling. It's a weird feeling to watch a movie like this. Although in the art movie cases, I've seen Roman Candles, I've seen an Andy Warhol film that did this, which I forget the name of, and I've seen various art installations that do this. In those, you're never sure where to look because it's not directing you. In this, or at least the version that was played in theaters, the director Mike Figgis used a technique where they'd lower and higher the volume of certain sections, so you'd be paying attention to up here basically, and then you'd be listening to stuff that's going on up here basically, or it would be down there or around here. So they did an interesting way to do it, because I don't know if anyone's done a real narrative kind of film, which this film, I don't think it's a real strict narrative. I think more people talk about how it does it than what it's about. I'd like to really get into this movie and maybe really watch the different versions of it, because on the DVD, not on the Netflix one that I got, because I had a bit of trouble finding this film, and I know Sinram has watched the various different versions, because you can watch the 4 different cameramen who were doing simultaneous takes at the time, and you can select between them and just watch one by itself, or I think you just watch the audio of that one by itself, as he demonstrated in his review. A lot of the critics who liked it mentioned how it's like refreshing to see a studio film that does something strange and arty like this, and kind of takes on an art movie thing that was very much something of the New York underground art movie thing from the late 70s, but actually does something interesting with it and finds a way to use digital technology. I mean, a continuous take for 90 some minutes was pretty good, and he's using mini DV tapes, which isn't as digital now. I mean, now I'm literally shooting this thing on 2 different cameras that have hard drives in them, or I guess this one has a data thing in it, but This one doesn't. It's showing the more digital age, but it's not showing how the digital age will be. But this is early on. I noticed in the 2000s, and you see this a lot in animated films of the 2000s, but there was this sense of experimentation in studio films because I kind of think they didn't know where the internet's going to go. They weren't exactly sure where media is going to go. So they're like, well, I mean, like if we try it, we should be fine. And I don't think this film was necessarily a really expensive movie. I mean, it had like a huge cast: Salma Hayek, Stellan Skarsgård, Jean Triplehorn, Saffron Burrows, Kyle MacLachlan, who I noticed in cast lists for this always gets put like pretty low, but I guess this is like after Twin Peaks and stuff, but before he was on Sex and the City and was on Desperate Housewives and kind of had his soap star rejuvenation, I guess he wasn't as hot at that time. You even have Leslie Mann way before she was as known as she is now, Holly Hunter. I feel like I'm leaving someone out. There's like a lot of people. And Danny Houston, like looking entirely different with like curly hair. It's an interesting way to do it. Apparently they kept reshooting this. This is the 15th attempt. So they shot this movie 15 times and they timed everyone with like stopwatches, and you can actually watch the first attempt on this DVD. But apparently what they originally do with all the other takes is they'd shoot in the morning and then watch the footage in the afternoon. That's what I read, but then I read at the end of the movie it says that they shot this starting at 3 p.m., which is like not the morning, depending on your definition of how time works. So I get maybe they were like watched it and then they're like, okay, was 14 earlier that day? I'm curious, but I kind of wonder like what's up with that. The interesting thing about this is, and Cineram brings up a point about how this is like perfect for DVD, and I agree with him, but then you get into what version of this movie is the right version to watch, and it's kind of like almost a choose your own adventure. I chose to watch the one that was released theatrically, that Roger Ebert saw and reviewed, that various people have reviewed, and most of the reviews and most of the responses about this film are of the cut that was in theaters. So I felt that that is the one I should review. And I don't like to review unless it's an older film and it's like a big thing. I like to only see something once, because that's honestly how most people will see a film, and I feel like that's the most honest for most of the time. There's certain like big classics, and if it's a big thing I will, for the most part, especially new movies and things like that. Also, I don't have a lot of time, and that's a whole different issue. But you can select which one to watch. So which one is the correct way? Do I need to watch all four to understand it, or can I watch this one? What is the right one to watch? And I don't know if there is an answer. I think most people would choose the cut, and I think that's probably the one, if you're going to get into this movie, you should watch fully. But it brings up this thing of, can you really see the whole thing? And I find that really inquisitive. I also think this is probably one of the most ponderous films that does real time, because most of the time when films do real time, I'm like, well, I mean, that's cool, but what's your point? Because I'm in real time like all the time. I'm always in real time. I don't really have much of a choice about it. So when I see a movie, you know, I like to relate to things, but there's a point. And like for every like Silent House or something like that, which doesn't work, Rope is an example. Hitchcock tried to do a film with very little takes. This one at least conceptually does something with real time, because you're seeing all these things going on at the exact same time, and they're being filmed at the exact same time. I actually sort of thought while I was watching it, I wonder if they shot each one by itself and then combined them and timed them perfectly, which is far more complicated maybe than what they did. I don't know if that's true. But instead they did it all at once. I mean, you could do that in a TV setting, but doing that in a film where mostly you'd have multiple setups and things like that would be harder, and not something people were used to with film. Actually, Mike Figgis, apparently in Roger Ebert's review of this film, he mentions that Mike Figgis liked shooting Leaving Las Vegas in 16mm because it was easier to shoot. And it's interesting, he kept going, I don't want to say crappier, but he kept going easier. And in one way, this is like, it's easier, but he did something different with it. And it makes you think about real time and all the lives that are intertwining and things like that in ways that I think is very interesting. I do think there's a lot of funny moments in this. Often you can get more fascinated with how it's made and the kind of different movie it is than anything else, which is kind of interesting. You wouldn't think most movies would do that. I think most movies you'd watch them and go like, oh, this film is about, you know, this thing and that thing and all that stuff. I think it definitely tries to say things about the digital age. I think it actually ends up sort of doing it more successfully than you'd think. This is a film that's really made for DVD. It's a shot on mini DV tape. Its shelf life has probably expired. We've moved on from those times, frankly. But I think Timecode actually doesn't expire the way you probably assume it does. It actually ends up saying a lot about media. They actually kind of pitch this movie at the end of this movie, which is a bizarre set of circumstances. It can be funny, it can be dramatic, it can be a lot of things. But even the description on Wikipedia and any description I found of it classified this as an experimental film. And I guess it's so kind of beyond any of our definitions of what normal narrative films would be. That's probably what you'd think of it. As this director, and I remember on the interview I listened to my dad's car in like 2000, which I'm sure is like totally exactly word for word what he said. He was talking about how cameras are just getting cheaper and cheaper and filmmaking was going to get easier and easier, and probably assumed that almost any jerk could make something with multiple cameras or something, which is, yeah, that's probably a thing. It's interesting, the future that I think this film predicts. I noticed a lot of older critics, particularly Amy Talbot, brought up that, Warhol did it better. But I think what this film does that's interesting is it tries to find a way to tell a story or try to do more of a narrative sort of thing within this. And I think successfully does it, but story-wise, you can't get too complicated. You couldn't do like a mystery type of thing within this because there's a lot going on and it is a little harder to absorb everything. So they kind of have to do this looser kind of Armacordy foreign film, all this thing happen at once type of a story. You couldn't do like the Avengers or a big blockbuster using this. And I think it was smart about the kind of story it was telling, and that's probably why this film works as well as it does, because it doesn't try to overexpand itself. Hardcore Henry, I think, does a good job of it, but you have to understand how you're using your concept with your story, and I think Mike Figgis does that rather successfully. I'd be curious to see this be put on at like a party in the background, like projection on a wall, if you've ever been to something like that, or on a TV with the sound off, and see how people react to it without that. That's not how this film was intended as well, but with all the DVD things and being able to select which one, you can select just individual ones and just watch those. Maybe there is no exact way to watch it, even though I'm trying to say that by the one that I reviewed. Most people I reviewed this saying that is the exact way. So I think this film lets you interpret it and lets you use it any way you want to. So I think that would probably work. I don't know if that's the best way to watch it the first time. This is a very interesting cinephile movie, and I can understand if you just want to disregard it and not be interested in it, but I think that is a wrong move. The early 2000s were an interesting time when Hollywood didn't go like, new Hollywood in the 70s or as interesting, no offense to the 2000s, but we're still experimenting and trying to do different things. Timecode does that in a way that makes you kind of reminds you of a time when Hollywood was open to these things and trying different things, and it probably didn't hurt that this film only took not a really long time to shoot, so I'm sure they were okay with it when they used to make smaller movies and such. Timecode is a kind of interesting cinephile obsession to get obsessed with into and kind of try to decipher what is exactly the right way to watch it, even though I guess I'm saying there is a right way, but maybe there isn't a right way, and you can bounce all around the screen trying to figure it out, even if Mike Figgis is trying to direct you where to go. But with all these different things going on, your eyes are going all over the screen trying to look at which is the right way. And maybe in life you kind of just have to realize there isn't an exact right way. You just have to be really happy with the experience that is this movie, and the experience of Timecode is an experience that you can experience many different ways, and I think it is an interesting experience in that, and the kind of movie that's at least refreshing for someone who watches a lot of movies, because this isn't the kind of film I don't think was attempted again, and I really doubt could be attempted as well as Timecode was. So if you have seen Timecode and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to. Definitely check out Sinram's review of Timecode. He does probably a much better job than I do explaining a lot of this stuff. But also, this was his pick from the kind of legacy or loyalty pick from the Patreon movie review vote. Occasionally, I am going to just pick movies that have been in there for a while, because Sinram has been very nice about being my patron as long as he has. So it's kind of like a bonus reward for people who have been very loyal to my Patreon, and just as a thank you for being so nice and supporting me as much as they have. So thank you to all the other patrons on my Patreon, and if you would like to pledge to my Patreon, click on the link below, and maybe I'll be reviewing your movie next month. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.